My mom didn't invite me to Easter because she said I was too cheap this year. Even my sister's new boyfriend was there. 6 days later, when it was time to pay, she called me in a panic, and without thinking twice, my mom uninvited me from Easter dinner because, and I swear I'm not making this up, she said I was too cheap this year. Too cheap. Like Easter is some kind of VIP event with a cover charge. Meanwhile, my sister Jolene's brand new boyfriend, some guy named Derek she'd been dating for maybe 3 weeks, got a seat at the table. 3 weeks, and he's breaking bread with my family while I'm sitting in my apartment eating leftover rice with my 7-year-old son Caleb. You want to know what made me cheap? I didn't bring a $200 floral arrangement to my mom's birthday brunch in March. I brought a $40 bouquet from the farmer's market and a card Caleb made with his own hands. His little fingers were cracked and bleeding from a psoriasis flare when he made that card, by the way. But sure, I'm cheap. Let me back up a little so you understand who you're dealing with here. My name is Bridget. I'm 31, I live in Dayton, Ohio, and for the past 2 years, my entire life has revolved around keeping my son alive and comfortable. Caleb was diagnosed with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis when he was 4. If you don't know what that looks like on a little kid, imagine your child waking up crying at 3 a.m. because his skin feels like it's on fire. Imagine watching him scratch until he bleeds because the itching won't stop. Imagine the other kids at school asking why he looks like that. Now imagine paying for the dermatologist visits, the biologics, the prescription creams, the special detergent, the humidifiers, the cotton-only clothing, all of it, on a receptionist's salary. That was my life. That is my life. So when my mom, Patricia, told me I wasn't welcome at Easter because I'd been embarrassingly frugal lately, I didn't even cry. Honestly, I think I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because at some point your body just doesn't know what to do with that level of disrespect anymore. My dad, Gene, didn't say a word. He never does. He just goes along with whatever Patricia decides, like he's her assistant and not her husband. I used to think he was quietly on my side. Now I think he's just quietly nowhere. You know who did call me that Easter Sunday, though? My sister Jolene. Right in the middle of dinner. She whispered into the phone like she was conducting some kind of spy operation. Bridge, this is so messed up. Derek keeps asking where you are and I don't know what to tell him. I told her to enjoy her ham and not to worry about me. But Jolene, and this is important, so remember this, Jolene said something that stuck with me. She said, this isn't right and I'm going to say something. I told her not to. Not yet. Because I knew if she made a scene at Easter, Patricia would find a way to make her the villain too, and I needed at least one person still on the inside, you know what I mean? So Easter came and went. Caleb and I had our own little celebration. I made deviled eggs, we watched a movie, and I let him have extra chocolate even though sugar sometimes aggravates his skin. Sometimes you just have to let your kid be a kid. He looked up at me with chocolate all over his face and said, Mom, how come Grandma doesn't like us anymore? And do you know what it feels like to hear that from a 7-year-old? I told him Grandma was just busy. I lied. Because what else was I supposed to say? Now here's where it gets interesting. 6 days after Easter. 6 days. My phone rings at 7:45 in the morning. It's Patricia. And she's not calling to apologize. Oh no, that would require a level of self-awareness she has never demonstrated. She's calling because the water heater in her house burst and flooded the basement, and the plumber wants $1,800, and could I help out since you're always saying you're good with money? Can you imagine? The audacity. I mean, really sit with that for a second. She kicks me out of a family holiday for being cheap, and less than a week later she's calling me for money. And you probably think I told her off, right? That I gave her some dramatic speech and hung up? Well, I wish I had. What I actually did was worse, or better depending on how you look at it. Without thinking twice I said, sure Mom. I'll take care of it. And I meant it. But not the way she thought I meant it. See, I'd been keeping something to myself for about 2 weeks at that point. Something that was about to change everything. I'd gotten a new job offer. A real one. An office manager position at a pediatric clinic in Columbus. And the pay was nearly double what I was making. They even had a benefits package that would cover most of Caleb's treatments. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not Jolene, not my parents, nobody. I was waiting until I signed the paperwork. But Patricia's phone call made me realize something. My family didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a resource. And I decided right then and there that it was time to start being very, very strategic about who I let into my new life. So I told my mom I'd handle the plumber situation. And I did. I called the plumber directly, spoke to him myself, negotiated the price down to $1,200 and paid it from my savings. The same savings I'd been scraping together for Caleb's upcoming treatment cycle. Do you think I should have done that? Honestly, even now I go back and forth on it. Part of me was still that little girl who wanted her mom to be proud of her. But the other part of me, the part that was growing louder every day, was already planning her next move. Because here's the thing about being underestimated. People get comfortable. They stop watching you. And when they stop watching you, that's when you make your move. I started that new job 2 weeks later. And I didn't tell Patricia or Jean a single thing about it. Jolene knew because Jolene always knows. She's like a human lie detector, that girl. She called me the night before my first day and said, "Bridge, you're going to crush it. And when you do, don't you dare let Mom take credit." I love that woman. I really do. She was only 26 then, still figuring out her own life, still dating Derek, still living 20 minutes from our parents. But she had more backbone than anyone else in that family. Well, she was building one. And so was I. My first month at the clinic was a blur. New systems, new patients, new everything. But the staff was incredible, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to check my bank account before buying groceries. Caleb started a new biologic treatment that was actually covered under my insurance now, and within 3 weeks, the plaques on his elbows started clearing. He came home from school one day and said, "Mom, nobody asked about my arms today." I locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed for 10 minutes. Happy tears. The kind you don't get very often, so you just let them come. Meanwhile, Patricia started calling more frequently. Not to check on me, to check on what I could do for her. The gutters needed cleaning, could I send someone? The car needed an oil change, could I pitch in? Jean's prescription copay went up, could I cover the difference? Every call was a transaction. Not once did she ask about Caleb. Not once did she ask how I was doing. And every single time I helped, I kept saying yes. And I know what you're thinking, Bridget, why? Why do you keep giving to people who take and take and take? Because I was building a case. Not a legal one. An emotional one. I was keeping a mental record of every single thing I did for my parents while they gave me nothing. Not even basic decency, in return. And very soon that record was going to matter. A lot. Jolene started coming over to my new place in Columbus on weekends. She'd bring takeout and play with Caleb while I caught up on laundry. One Saturday night after Caleb was asleep, she looked at me and said, "You know Mom told Aunt Francine that you moved to Columbus because you couldn't afford Dayton anymore?" I set my drink down. She said what? She told her you were struggling so bad you had to leave town. Now Aunt Francine is my mom's sister, and she's the kind of woman who forwards prayer chain emails and then gossips about the people she's praying for. So I knew that if Patricia told Francine, the whole extended family thought I was some kind of charity case. My cousin Renata, Francine's daughter, had probably already told her book club. And that was the moment something shifted in me. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something more calculated. I looked at Jolene and said, "I'm done being their atom in their punching bag. It's time they see exactly what happens when I stop showing up." Jolene raised her glass. Finally. What happened next, and I promise you you're going to want to hear this, is the moment everything started to unravel for Patricia and Jean. Because the thing about people who take you for granted, they never expect you to actually leave. And they definitely don't expect what I did after that conversation with Jolene. But I'll get to that. Trust me, it's worth the wait. So remember how I said I was done? I meant it. But here's the thing about revenge when it comes to family. You can't just blow up and scream and slam doors. That's what they expect. That's what Patricia could work with, because then she gets to call Aunt Francine and say, "See? Bridget's so unstable, so dramatic, no wonder she can't keep her life together." Well, my revenge was going to be quiet. Surgical. The kind where they don't even realize what's happening until it's way too late. The first thing I did was stop answering the phone. Not dramatically. I didn't block anyone. I didn't send a long text message about boundaries. I just got busy. Every time Patricia called, I'd text back an hour later. "Sorry, was in a meeting." "Hey Mom, crazy day at work, what's up?" And then when she'd tell me what she needed, because it was always a need, never a, "How are you?" I'd say, "Oh no, that's tough. I hope you figure it out." And nothing else. You have no idea how powerful that is. Try it sometime. Just wish someone well and offer absolutely nothing. It's devastating. The first time I did it, she needed help paying for a carpet cleaning because Jean spilled an entire pot of coffee on the living room rug. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon, going on and on about how Jean was useless and the stain was setting and the carpet cleaner wanted $300. Old Bridget would have already had her debit card out. New Bridget said, "Oh wow, that's annoying. Maybe try baking soda and vinegar?" I saw something on YouTube about that. Anyway, gotta run, Caleb has a doctor's appointment. Love you. Silence on the other end. Then, "Bridget, I'm asking for your help." And I just helped. Baking soda and vinegar. Works great apparently. Okay, bye Mom. I hung up and honestly, my hands were shaking. I'm not going to pretend I was cool about it. My whole body was vibrating. I'd never said no to that woman in my life. But you know what happened next? Nothing. She figured it out. She always could, she just didn't want to. Why would you fix your own problems when you've got a daughter who'll fix them for you, right? Jolene called me that night laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Mom called me after you hung up on her. She said, and I quote, "Your sister has lost her mind." Bridge, she was so confused. Good. Let her be confused. Now here's where Jolene really started stepping up, and I need you to appreciate this because it was not easy for her. Jolene had always been the good daughter. Not because she did more than me, but because she demanded less. She didn't have a sick kid. She didn't need financial help. She just showed up, smiled, brought the right wine, laughed at Jean's terrible jokes, and Patricia loved her for it. Being the easy child was Jolene's whole identity in that family. So what she did next took guts. It was a Sunday, maybe 3 weeks after I started my whole strategic withdrawal. Patricia had invited Jolene over for dinner, and apparently the entire meal was just Patricia complaining about me. How I'd changed. How I was selfish now. How Columbus had turned me into someone she didn't recognize. Jolene sat there eating pot roast and listening to this for over an hour. And Jolene told me this part word for word, so picture it, she put her fork down and said, "Mom, when's the last time you asked Bridget how Caleb's doing?" Patricia blinked. "What? Caleb. Your grandson. The one with the skin condition that keeps him up at night. The one Bridget spends every spare dollar on. When did you last ask about him?" Patricia started doing that thing she does where she rearranges the napkins and won't make eye contact. "I ask about him all the time." "No, you don't. I'm here every other week and I have never once heard you bring up Caleb unless it's to say Bridget uses him as an excuse. And honestly, Mom, it's getting really hard to sit here and listen to you trash the one person in this family who has never once said no to you." Jean apparently just stared at his plate like it contained classified information. Classic Jean. Patricia's response? "Well, I didn't realize I was such a terrible mother." The guilt trip. The classic Patricia deflection. But Jolene wasn't done. "Nobody said terrible. I said unfair. There's a difference. And I think you know it." When Jolene told me all this, I cried. Not sad tears, just, do you know that feeling when someone finally stands up for you and you realize how long you've been holding your breath? It was like that. Years of holding my breath. But Patricia didn't take it well. Over the next couple of weeks, she started doing something I didn't expect. She started calling my cousin Renata Aunt Francine's daughter, and basically campaigning against me. Telling Renata I'd abandoned the family, that I was keeping Caleb away from his grandparents on purpose, that I'd become cold and calculating. Which, okay, the calculating part was accurate, but still. She was building a narrative and she was using the extended family to do it. Renata, to her credit, called me directly. "Bridge, your mom's been saying some wild stuff. I just wanted to hear your side." And I told her. Everything. The Easter uninvitation. The constant money requests. The fact that she'd never once visited Caleb during a flare-up. The way she told Francine I moved because I was broke when I actually moved for a better job. I told Renata all of it calmly with receipts. As I had them. Every text, every missed holiday, every payment I'd made on Patricia's behalf. I'd screenshotted everything. Renata was quiet for a long time and then she said, "Bridget, this is really messed up. I'm telling my mom the real story." And she did. And do you know what happened? The narrative flipped. Slowly, but it flipped. Francine called Patricia and apparently said, "Pat, I love you, but you need to think about what you're doing to that girl." Coming from Francine, who agrees with everything Patricia says, that was basically a slap in the face. Jolene told me Patricia didn't speak to Francine for 4 days after that call. Now, around this time, something else happened that I wasn't expecting at all. I met someone. His name is Owen. He's a physical therapist at the clinic where I work. Not my department, but we kept running into each other in the break room. He had this habit of leaving terrible dad jokes on sticky notes near the coffee machine. One of them said, "I'm reading a book about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down." I groaned so loud he heard me from the hallway and came back around the corner grinning like he'd won an award. Owen was different from anyone I'd dated before. When I told him about Caleb's psoriasis, which I brought up on our second date because honestly if someone can't handle it I'd rather know immediately, he didn't flinch. He didn't do the awkward sympathy face. He asked me what biologics Caleb was on, whether we tried phototherapy and if the new insurance was covering everything okay. Turns out his younger brother had eczema growing up and Owen basically helped raise him. He understood what it meant to love someone whose body is constantly working against them. Our third date, Owen met Caleb. I know, some people say that's too fast. But my life doesn't have time for slow. And Caleb needed to see that not every adult in his life was going to let him down. Owen brought him a coloring book, not a baby one, a really intricate nature one with birds and forests, and said, "I heard you're an artist." Caleb lit up. They sat at my kitchen table coloring for 45 minutes while I just stood in the doorway trying not to cry for the millionth time that month. So life was actually getting good? My job was solid, Caleb's skin was improving, Owen was becoming a real presence, and Jolene was visiting almost every weekend. But Patricia and Jean? They were spiraling. Because here's what happens when the person you've been using as a crutch suddenly walks away. You fall. And they were falling. Patricia called me one evening, and for the first time her voice was different. Smaller. She said, "Bridget, your father and I feel like we're losing you." And I could have caved. Every instinct I'd built over 31 years of being her daughter told me to cave. To say, "No, Mom, you're not losing me, let me come over this weekend and fix everything." Instead I said, "Maybe you should think about why." And I hung up. Was that harsh? Maybe. Do you think I went too far? Part of me still wonders. But I also know that if I'd given in that night, nothing would have ever changed. Sometimes people don't learn from kindness. Sometimes they only learn from absence. And the absence was about to get so much louder. Because what I was planning next, the thing that was going to finally force Patricia and Jean to look in the mirror, it was already in motion. Jolene and I had been talking about it for weeks. And let's just say it involved a certain family event that Patricia assumed she'd be at the center of the way she always was. She was wrong. She was very, very wrong. Okay, so here's the thing about Patricia. She lives for summer. Specifically, she lives for being in charge of summer. Every year since I was a kid, she organized the family's 4th of July week. Rented the lake house in Put-in-Bay, assigned everyone dishes to bring, made a spreadsheet for sleeping arrangements. The woman treated a family vacation like a military operation. She'd start planning in April, and by June she was sending group texts with subject lines like, "Mandatory reading, lake house rules." So naturally she assumed this year would be the same. He assumed wrong. It started with Jolene calling me one night in early May. "Bridge, what if we did the summer trip ourselves this year? No Patricia. No Jean. Just us, the cousins, whoever wants to come." I almost dropped my phone. Not because it was crazy, but because I'd been thinking the exact same thing. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. Renata's already in." Renata being on board was huge. She's Francine's daughter, which meant this wasn't just me and Jolene going rogue. This was the extended family quietly choosing a side. Renata told Jolene, "I adore Aunt Pat, but she's been acting like the world owes her a parade and I'm tired of marching." Can you even imagine Patricia hearing that? So we started planning. Quietly. No group texts, nothing Patricia could intercept. Jolene found a cabin in Hocking Hills. Not a lake house, something completely ours. Gorgeous 3-bedroom place surrounded by forest with a fire pit and a wraparound porch. Renata's brother Mitchell said he'd come. My cousin Wesley on Jean's side asked to join too. Owen didn't hesitate for a second. He said, "Caleb's going to love the woods." And he was right. Caleb had been cooped up in apartments and doctors' offices for so long that the idea of running around outside made him practically vibrate. Meanwhile, Patricia was doing her usual thing. Late April she sent her annual email. Subject line, "Put-in-Bay 2026. Who's IN?" She sent it to everyone. Me, Jolene, Francine, Renata, Mitchell, Wesley. The whole family tree. Nobody responded. Well, Jean replied all and said, "Sounds great, Pat." Which is the most Jean thing that has ever happened. But nobody else said a word. She sent a follow-up 3 days later. "Just checking everyone got my email. Need headcounts by May 15th. Still nothing. Do you think we were being cruel? Sometimes I honestly wonder. But then I remember Easter and Caleb asking why Grandma doesn't like us, and every check I wrote for Patricia's house while she told the family I was broke. And the guilt passes. The silence destroyed her. She started calling people individually. Renata said she was probably busy. Mitchell said he'd get back to her. And Jolene told her a version of the truth. She said, "Mom, I think people are just doing their own thing this summer." Patricia pushed back. "We always do the lake. This is what we do. Maybe that's the problem." Then Jean called Jolene separately and said in his Jean way, "Your mother is upset. Could you just sign up for the lake?" And Jolene said, "Dad, when's the last time you stood up for Bridget? When's the last time you told Mom she was wrong about anything? I'm done pretending this family is fine when you two treat my sister like she's disposable. So no. I'm spending this summer with Bridget." Jean hung up without saying goodbye. Most emotion he'd shown in years. The week before the trip, Patricia showed up at my apartment in Columbus. Unannounced. Hour-and-a-half drive, no call. I opened the door and she looked tired. Smaller than I remembered. She said, "Can I come in?" Caleb was at a playdate with Owen's nephew, so it was just us. She looked around my apartment. The drawings on the fridge, the photo of Caleb and Owen at the zoo, my little herb garden on the windowsill. She'd never been there before. Not once. She said, "You've built a nice life here." I just nodded. "Nobody's coming to the lake." "I know. Do you know why?" And this was the moment. I could have softened it. But I thought about everything, all of it, and I said, yeah, Mom. I do know why. Do you? She cried. Not the performative kind she uses for sympathy. Real crying, the ugly kind. She said, I've made mistakes. Your father and we've made mistakes. Part of me wanted to hug her. The little girl part that remembers her braiding my hair before school. But the grown woman who'd been fighting alone for years said, yeah, you have. She asked if she could join whatever we were doing. And I said no. I said, this summer is for the people who showed up for me when it was hard. You weren't one of them. I need you to sit with that. She hugged me at the door, a real hug, and whispered, I'm sorry about Easter. It wasn't enough. But it was something. The Hocking Hills trip was the best week of my life. Caleb ran through the woods every day. Owen taught him to skip rocks in the creek. Jolene and Renata became inseparable. They started calling themselves the cousins who should have been sisters. Mitchell grilled every night wearing a ridiculous apron that said, Grill Sergeant. Wesley brought his guitar and played terrible country songs around the fire pit, and we all sang along not knowing a single word. One night, Caleb fell asleep in Owen's lap by the fire, and Owen just sat there for an hour not moving. Jolene took a photo and sent it to me with the caption, This is your family now, Bridge. That photo is still my lock screen. Patricia and Jean spent that week alone. No lake house. No family. Just them in their Dayton house with the broken water heater and coffee-stained carpet, and the slow realization that they'd pushed away the people who loved them most. And honestly, I hope it was uncomfortable. I hope they felt the empty chairs. Because maybe that discomfort was the beginning of something better. Not for me, I'd already found mine. He was 7 years old, covered in freckles and fading plaques, sleeping in the arms of a man who chose us. I don't know what comes next with my parents. Mom's apology was real, I believe that. But one apology doesn't undo years. Jolene says give it time. Owen says I'll know when I'm ready. Caleb just says, Mom, can we go back to the cabin? Yeah, baby. We can. So that's my story. It's messy and I definitely didn't do everything right. I paid bills I shouldn't have paid, stayed quiet when I should have spoken up, probably could have handled the lake house thing with more grace. But I'm human. I did the best I could with a cracked heart and a kid who needed me to keep going. If you're dealing with something like this, family that only calls when they need something, people who should love you but make you feel like you're never enough, you're allowed to step back. Not forever maybe, but long enough to remember who you are. If you made it this far, thank you. That means everything to me. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like. It genuinely helps. And if you would have done something differently or you think I was too harsh or not harsh enough, tell me in the comments. I want to hear it. And if you've got your own story, share it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just say it out loud. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Bridget.